What if every running back went to the team they had their best game against? If your team has been terrorized by a certain running back throughout the years, well, today's your lucky day. You finally get that running back on your team. Now, we're going to see which game they had their highest fantasy points in, but we're going to use half PPR since, you know, we don't want the catches to be too meaningful, but we don't want them to be completely meaningless. So half point per reception is what PPR means for my non-fantasy players. We begin with the Chicago Bears. DeAndre Swift, 82 overall running back, had his best game last season against the Los Angeles Rams when he had 26 fantasy points, 93 yards rushing, along with 1 rushing touchdown, 7 receptions, along with 72 yards through the air. He's headed to Los Angeles. On to the Cincinnati Bengals. Chase Brown, in my opinion, should be higher than a 79. He's very talented, and he displayed those talents when he played against the Tennessee Titans in December of last season. 97 yards on the ground along with a rushing touchdown, and then 3 catches for 16 yards and another touchdown. He's headed to Tennessee. Looking at Buffalo's running back, James Cook had his best game 2 seasons ago against the Dallas Cowboys. 179 yards and a touchdown on the ground to go along with 2 catches, 42 yards and another touchdown through the air. The Cowboys finally have their RB1. The Broncos' Javonte Williams is up next. His career has been ravaged so far by injuries, but he does have some nice performances under his belt. The best one came against a division rival. Back in 2021, he had 102 yards on the ground, along with 6 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown against Kansas City. Another running back that's going to stay in the division, Nick Chubb on the Cleveland Browns, also has dealt with some injuries. Hopefully he comes back healthier next season, but this team might not be hoping that, okay? Baltimore felt his wrath back in 2019 when he ran for 165 yards and 3 touchdowns against them, along with 3 catches for 18 yards. He's headed to the Ravens. The rookie Bucky Irvin had himself a phenomenal season, one of the best young running backs in the NFL already. He displayed how true that statement was against, once again, a division rival. The Panthers let him get 152 yards and a touchdown on the ground, along with 3 catches for 33 yards through the air. He's headed to Carolina. I feel like James Conner is constantly underrated. All he does when healthy is produce good season after good season. And back in 2021, he had 21 carries for 96 yards and 2 touchdowns, along with 5 catches for 77 yards and another touchdown through the air against the San Francisco 49ers. He's their new RB1. On to the Chargers, J.K. Dobbins. Yet another guy that when healthy is very capable of going off, and he proved this back when he was still in the AFC North, playing on the Ravens. 13 for 160 and 2 touchdowns against the Cincinnati Bengals. Looking at Isaiah Pacheco now from the Kansas City Chiefs. He had 18 for 130 on the ground, along with 7 catches, 35 yards and a tutty through the air, once again against the Cincinnati Bengals. Burrow has a new RB1. Jonathan Taylor was a first-team All-Pro for a reason. He was going nuts in 2021, had 51.9 fantasy points and half PPR in a game against another AFC opponent. 32 rushing attempts, 185 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground, 3 catches, 19 yards and another touchdown through the air against Buffalo. So Josh Allen has a new RB1. Brian Robinson's still a young running back for the Washington Commanders, but he has some nice games under his belt. One of them came against an AFC opponent when he had 18 carries, 87 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, along with 2 catches for 42 yards against Denver. He's going to the Broncos. Rico Dowdle from the Cowboys just started getting playing time the last couple seasons, so he doesn't have the most games in his career, but he did have a pretty good one against a division rival, New York. 22 carries, 112 yards and a touchdown, along with 3 catches for 11 yards. He's headed to the G-Men. You guys remember the 70-point game. Achane, Mostert, they were running crazy against the Broncos, and Devon's the highest overall, so we're gonna go with him. 18 for 203 and 2 touchdowns on the ground, along with 4 catches, 30 yards and 2 more touchdowns through the air. Denver is gonna have him on their side this time. This one was a no-brainer. If you watched him all season long, you remember the game he had against Los Angeles. I felt bad for the Rams. 255 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, along with 4 catches, 47 yards, over 300 yards against against Los Angeles. So now Saquon is on their team. I expect some crazy performances for the rest of this guy's career, but so far his best one came against Carolina. Bijan Robinson had 170 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, along with 2 catches for 3 yards through the air. He's headed to the Panthers. Raise your hand if Christian McCaffrey has had a good game against your team. Yep, keep the hands raised. Yep, that's everybody, okay? Well, he did it to one team worse than the others when he had 20 carries, 106 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, not to mention 7 catches, 71 yards, and another touchdown through the air against Arizona. Kyler gets a new RB1. Another talented rookie, Tyrone Tracy Jr. I'm telling you, this rookie class is unbelievable. Running backs, wide receivers, even quarterbacks, they're insane. And Tracy had the best game of his young career against the Pittsburgh Steelers. 20 carries, 145 yards, and a touchdown, along with 2 catches for 5 yards. He's going to the AFC. On to Travis Etienne and the Jacksonville Jaguars. He had himself a nasty performance against another AFC opponent. 2 seasons ago, 26 carries, 136 yards, 2 touchdowns, along with 4 catches, 48 yards through the air. He's headed to Buffalo. Breece Hall from the Jets, extremely talented running back. And one team experienced that firsthand. The Washington Commanders, when he had 20 carries, 95 yards, 2 touchdowns, along with 12 catches and 96 yards through the air. Dual threat running back is headed to the Commanders. The Lions have 2 very good running backs, but we're going to focus on the higher overall. Jahmyr Gibbs had 23 carries, 139 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, and then 5 catches, 31 yards, and another tutty through the air against the Vikings. So he's their new RB1. Josh Jacobs was first team All-Pro in 2022 for a reason. 33 carries, 229 yards, and 2 touchdowns against an NFC opponent when he was on the Raiders. Oh yeah, not to mention 6 catches, 74 yards against Seattle. He's gonna be the Seahawks' new RB1. Panthers have already collected a couple of running backs, and now they have to give away their former starter. Chuba Hubbard had 25 for 152 and 2 touchdowns, along with 4 catches for 13 yards. He's headed to Arizona to back up CMC. Now we're in New England looking at Ramondre Stevenson. He had his best game a few seasons ago when Mac Jones was still at quarterback. 20 carries, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns to go along with 4 catches and 14 yards against Cleveland. So he's the Browns' new RB1. Alexander Madison from the Raiders had himself some pretty good games back when he was in Minnesota. 21 for 95 and a touchdown on the ground, along with 3 catches, 50 yards, and another touchdown in the receiving game against the Detroit Lions. He's headed there to back up David Montgomery. Kind of scared to see what the Rams do with Saquon. If it's anything like what they've been doing with Kyren Williams. He had 16 for 143 and then 6 for 61 and 2 touchdowns against the Cardinals. I kind of feel bad for Arizona. That's another running back that has tortured them, but now he's on their team. Henry has been torturing teams for years, but there's one game where he just went crazy. 99-yard touchdown against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He had 17 carries, 238 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Didn't even have to do anything through the air, okay? That's just a nasty stat line. Jacksonville is going to have him as their new starter. I remember it like it was yesterday. Christmas from a handful of seasons ago when Alvin Kamara had not 1,
not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5,
6 rushing touchdowns against the Minnesota Vikings. Go along with 22 carries, 155 yards. And of course, you know he had to throw in some catches. You know, the dual threat running back, 3 for 17 yards to go along with it. He's headed to Minnesota. When healthy, Kenneth Walker is one of the best running backs in the league. And he showed that against the Detroit Lions. 12 carries, 80 yards, and 3 touchdowns, along with 4 catches and 36 yards. So he's going to lead that running back room in Detroit. Najee Harris, consistently good. I think he has 1,000 yards in every season so far. I'd say he's a little underrated, man, especially when you look at what he did against the Browns. 28 carries, 188 yards, and a touchdown, along with 3 catches and 18 more yards through the air. Cleveland is where he's gonna go. This one might have been karma for all those years when the Panthers had CMC terrorizing teams. Joe Mixon had 22 for 153 and 4 touchdowns against the Panthers, along along with 4 catches, 58 yards, and another touchdown. 5 total. Back when he was in Cincinnati, he's headed to Carolina. Tony Pollard has some nice performances back when he was in Dallas. 15 for 80 on the ground, along with 6 catches, 109 yards, and 2 touchdowns through the air. Against Minnesota, the Vikings get yet another RB. And then finally, Aaron Jones on the Vikings had some nasty performances when he was on the Green Bay Packers. One rises above the rest. 19 carries, 107 yards, 4 touchdowns. And you already know he's a dual threat, so he wasn't finished there. 7 catches, 75 yards against the Dallas Cowboys. That's the last trade of the video. So if your team didn't get a new running back, I mean, it's kind of bittersweet because it means you haven't given up the best career performance of any starting RB, but you miss out on some great running backs. So it's like a double-edged sword. Who do you think is going to benefit the most from this experiment? A lot of teams got better, some teams got worse. There's only one way to find out: by simming all the way to the playoffs. Here's the playoff bracket. The Bills, I knew they would be up there with Jonathan Taylor and Josh Allen, man. That's just nasty. The Ravens, Chargers, Chiefs, Broncos, Jaguars, and Bengals. And then Philadelphia, even with no Saquon, they end up making it with Kenny G at running back. The Packers, Seahawks, Cardinals, Rams, Panthers, and Cowboys. I want to go week by week, see if we can find any crazy running back weeks. You know, usually it's the quarterbacks that win player of the week, but I just want to see. Okay, there we go. Gibbs, 155 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then 2 for 10 through the air. That's the first running back we've seen. Oh, McCaffrey, 20 for 110, 4 rushing touchdowns, along with 2 receptions, 28 yards in week number 10. And then it's back to the quarterbacks. The usual suspects. Oh, there's Drew Lock, Russell Wilson, Will Levis, Bryce Young. So we saw some different ones. Only 2 running back weeks where they got player of the week. Mahomes, the only quarterback to throw for over 5,000 yards. Hurts is right there. For all the people saying he can't throw for over 4,000. Let's see next year. Yeah. Anyways, Patrick also had the most passing touchdowns, 52, 10 more than second place Purdy and Josh Allen and Love. And then here are all the guys that threw for at least 25. 28 INTs for Anthony Richardson, but Drake May, along with Jameis Winston, threw more interceptions than touchdowns. Those might have been the only 2. Daniels threw the same amount. Surprised that he had that bad of a season. Mahomes had the highest completion percentage, so he got the triple crown. Averaged over 300 yards per game. Nasty season from him, but we're here for the running backs. Henry had 7 more yards than McCaffrey for the most this season. He killed it in Jacksonville. CMC on Arizona did his thing. Jacobs was 3rd. Those 3 were ahead of the pack. And then Saquon on the Rams, Gibbs on the Vikings, Mixon on the Panthers, Walker in Detroit, JT of course in Buffalo did his thing. Dillon was 1 yard away from getting 1,000 in Green Bay. He had to step up after they lost Josh Jacobs. Most rushing touchdowns, Derrick Henry 23, Walker 22, Hurts with 20. Let's go team by team. Why not, man? Roshan 800 yards on the Bears, Pacheco 1,000 yards, 15 touchdowns in Cincinnati. JT of course 1,000-yard season. Brian Robinson Jr. 700 yards, not the best. Najee 800 yards, so his 1,000-yard streak ends. Rashad White did his thing in Tampa Bay. McCaffrey 1,400 yards, 800 yards for Edwards, 15 touchdowns. Touchdown machine. Same with Kareem Hunt in Kansas City. The Colts lost JT. They didn't replace it with anyone, so Goodson had to step up. Only 500 yards. Breece Hall 11 yards shy of 900. He had 9 touchdowns. Aaron Jones 1,000-yard season in Dallas, 16 touchdowns. You knew he was going to eat. Mostert was all by his lonesome in Miami, 13 touchdowns. Kenneth Gainwell 14 touchdowns, but Hurts, you know he's going to do that, man. The tush push got him in there 20 times. Algier, very capable running back, 800 yards. Connor 955 yards in that Kyle Shanahan offense in San Fran. Dowdle 965 yards in New York. Henry of course almost 1,500 yards, led the league in rushing touchdowns. Braylon Allen showing a lot of promise in New York, 850 yards. Kenneth Walker 1,000 yards. Behind that, Detroit O-line, Montgomery had 9 touchdowns. They combined for over 30 on the ground. Dillon of course 1 yard away. He had himself a good season. Mixon 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns in Carolina. Gibson, underrated running back in my opinion. He had a good season. Sincere McCormick had himself a good season in Las Vegas. Saquon 1,300 yards, 11 touchdowns in Los Angeles. Chubb 1,000-yard season. Him and Lamar combined for 28 rushing touchdowns. Kendre Miller had to step up in New Orleans, didn't have the best season. Jacobs though, went crazy in Seattle. Warren was less than 30 yards away from 1,000. Pierce with 900 yards for the Texans, and then Tyjae Spears 11 touchdowns in Tennessee. Minnesota Gibbs 1,200 yards and 7 tutties. Most receiving yards, Brandon Ayuk, Cooper Kupp always near the top. Watson, Amon-Ra, and Rashee Rice, who was doing his thing before he got injured in Kansas City. Might have to do something similar with wide receivers in the next video. If you want to see that, I need to see them likes, okay? Destroy that like button. Let's get to maybe 25 or even 26, okay? My 2 favorite running backs of all time. That would be extremely nice. Defense, Demario Davis, most tackles, 1 more than Jordan Brooks. Tackles for a loss, Myles Garrett, 19 to lead everyone. And 25 sacks for Hutchinson to lead the entire league. Crosby was second with 19 and a half. 8 INTs for Carlton Davis, 7 for Murphy, and then a bunch of guys with 6. Any running backs in the top 10 for MVP? Mahomes wins it, Hurts and Allen in the top 3, but no RBs, unfortunately. OPOY goes to Josh Allen. Rashee Rice is second. Henry, the highest running back, at number 5. Hunt ends up in the top 10. DPOY goes to Crosby. Hutchinson, of course, wins it in the NFC. OPOY goes to Hurts. Let's see if there's any running backs. Yes, Mixon in the top 10 at number 7. So let's see which running back on their new team can help them get to the Super Bowl. It's gonna be James Cook and Aaron Jones and the Cowboys against James Cook's former team, the Bills, with Jonathan Taylor. Kansas City with Kareem Hunt and Javonte Williams were right there. Same with Philly and Kenneth Gainwell, 1 game away. But Aaron Jones and company were just a little too much. Mahomes had himself a great season, but could not get past Jonathan Taylor. Averaged 12 yards per carry in that game. Now, how will he fare against Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, and this Cowboys defense? Well, if Allen keeps on passing like this, he might not have to touch the rock too often. Matter of fact, he didn't touch it at all. On his first drive, Allen's gonna dump it off to Kincaid to get down inside the 5, and then he passes it to his rookie, Keon Coleman. 7-0 ball game just like that. 2nd and 2, Dak gonna find his running back Aaron Jones out of the backfield, one of the best dual threat RBs in the league. I was very shocked to see him not only leave the Packers, but go to the Vikings, like a division rival. He wasn't the only one either. Like Saquon did it. It was just a crazy offseason in terms of running backs. They were getting very undervalued, and hopefully, the years that Jacobs, Saquon, and Henry had can change things a little bit. Who knows? Right now, Dak finding CeeDee Lamb to tie it up. The passing games are what's working for both teams, but hey, Jonathan Taylor on the second rush picks up a first down. They got another good drive going. This time, Allen's gonna find Shakir. The Yak Monster gets them the lead back. Buffalo seems to go deep in almost every single sim, and it makes sense. They have the MVP, Josh Allen, with some underrated weapons. Keon, Shakir, Kincaid, and Knox when healthy. And of course, Amari Cooper, they even mentioned him. And you can't forget about James Cook. So a slight upgrade at running back, I would say. Jonathan Taylor, so now they're up 10 in the Super Bowl. Dallas is not going away that easily, though. 4th and 4, they kick the field goal. Now they need to stop. 7-point game. Can they get Jonathan Taylor to not pick up a first? Let's see. 2nd and 7. That's a nice run right there. 3rd down and 2. They go to the jet sweep with Shakir. Risky play call did not work out. So now Dallas has a chance to tie it up. Can Dak lead a game-tying drive? Well, that's not how you want to get started. Ed Oliver pushes him back. Huge sack. 4th down. Dak throwing it up. It's incomplete. The Bills win another one. Jonathan Taylor with Allen. I knew that would be a nasty duo. They hoist the Lombardi. Let me know if your prediction was right. Thanks for watching to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.
'Cause I'm on one, ay, number one, ay, I'm the one, yeah, getting it done, ay, yeah, this one of them ones, yeah, rolling up, ay, fill my cup, ay, on my way up, yeah, ay, 'cause I'm on one, yeah, number one, I'm the one, yeah, getting it done, ay, this one of them ones.